Reddit Ask Me Anything. I served as a doctor with the United States Air Force. I advised on large-scale disaster preparedness contingencies including a zombie attack. Ask Me Anything. First time poster. So forgive me if I forget something obvious. I was directed over here by the comment section of a different post. During my time as a military doctor, I worked on disaster preparedness, which included biological outbreaks and attacks. An aggression-inducing illness is on that list. The word zombie is never used. However, there exists a plan for a rabies outbreak that would be systemic and widespread to the point that military intervention would be needed. We, military, have prepared for every eventuality that can be thought of, including ones that have nearly no mathematically significant chance of happening. Like with a pandemic outbreak of rabies, I currently work as a neuropsychologist and psychotherapist. Ask me anything. What would you say is the most disturbing and realistic disaster you and the US have prepared for? Hands down missile. Bombs. Bombs big and small. Plain and simple. On the whole, nearly everything we do revolves around preventing other countries from flying into our airspace or into the airspace of a place we like. We devote countless warehouse-sized computers to scanning and watching the skies at all times. We aren't just looking for nukes. It's anything. There isn't a geese that flies into United States airspace without the US knowing about it 3 months before the bird thinks about taking a flight. So, then, what happens when a bomb does land? Every major city has a fallout shelter. Nearly all double as something else. A school, a hospital, a flea market, you name it. They are safe places, usually in buildings that are reinforced or have underground havens that the local community can go to in the event of bombing. Emergency broadcast would ring out on everything device that carries a current. It would instruct citizens where to go and what to do. The citizens would either go to shelter or stay in their own. Then there would be the biggest dogfight to win them all. Depending on severity, it could mean a few days to a few decades, all of which are meticulously planned for. Are we supposed to know about these shelters beforehand? Yes. Public schools and churches have mostly been charged with the spreading of this information on local levels. Here is a great little article on shelters, where to find them, how to build your own, and a bunch of other stuff. The buildings are also clearly marked with the fallout shelter emblem. It's yellow, black, and red, and it looks like a nuclear power symbol, no bigger than a handicapped parking sign. Why did you make this post and then disappear? I'm here. I am just fighting off a wave of messages and PMs and pictures, and I'm pretty sure a guy just offered me a house. Did you take the house? I did not. I don't want to live in Florida. He was disappeared. NSA has entered the chat. Have anything you've seen or uncovered that is classified made you go, holy duck, or I knew it, or how was your reaction? This came up while doing some background work for a particular project involving pigeons. So a while back the US government was all hung up on the idea of teaching pigeons to fly explosives to submarines as little kamikaze pilots. The pigeons didn't know, obviously. So little bomb vests were made for the pigeons, and they were taught to hone in on a ship and land. Then the bomb vest would blow up, causing the skip to get a huge hole in it. Problem was, the pigeons had a habit of landing on American ships too, not just the German ones. So we scrapped that plan. But then someone in government was like, hey, what if another country did that to us but trained them to land in our cities? Out of that was born the plan for an invasion of bombing pigeons. The plan dictates that laser racks. I talked about these in another post a bit ago. They are huge racks of lasers designed to shoot flying things out of the sky. Pinpoint precision, and it can handle large volumes of flying things. Mosquitoes were the original targets of the racks. Be used to identify and target birds with explosives. That for me was a holy duck moment. So what's the plan for a zombie outbreak? Go to the Winchester, have a nice cold pint, and wait for all of this to blow over. So for a rabies virus outbreak, we use thermal equipment to quickly identify those infected but not showing signs. It's a quick way to weed out anyone with an even slightly elevated body temperature. We weed out who has a regular cold versus rabies. We isolate those with rabies and treat, if we can. If the window has closed for treatment, we quarantine and make comfortable until expiration. There will be command points in the city to control the flow and movement of the ill, suspected ill, and healthy. Curfews would be instated until infection was squashed. Expiration. I know in this line of work you have to use terms like that, but wow. Amazing what humans are capable of. The zombie angle is a joke for sure, but the very real possibility of a rabies outbreak is well within the realm of possibilities, so we plan for it. It's far more likely that the military runs into rabies while overseas rather than here in the States, but we still plan for a large-scale outbreak here in the States. Biobugs are by far the greatest threat to humanity. I include humans killing other humans in that category as well. So that's why that today I learned recently said no country has a plan for a zombie attack, cause they don't use the word zombie. That is 100% correct. What's the contingency plan for a horde of Naruto running alien freedom fighters descending on a base? Well, after I shit my pants watching my best friend get torn in two by an alien, I will probably find God, then open fire immediately while screaming about how I don't want to die in Florida, most likely place for our alien friends to land. Scariest, real life possible one? The absolute scariest for me, because it almost happens all the time. Asteroids. An asteroid roughly 60 miles wide would completely and totally kill every single solitary living thing in existence in a fraction of a moment. Asteroids 1 mile wide would take out entire countries like that, and they fly by Earth very closely all the time. It happens so frequently that NASA and the military have teamed up to come up with an Armageddon-style plan when we will fly to outer space and use explosives to send the asteroids onto another projection away from Earth. In fact, there is one asteroid that NASA believes might not be able to pass us headed our way that's 80 miles wide. It's expected to reach us very ducking soon and NASA is scrambling. It's been all over the news lately, you may have already heard about it. But these are absolutely terrifying for the simple fact that Earth is missed by them all the time. So according to the user and your experience, what should I do, as an individual, in the event of a zombie aggression-inducing illness apocalypse? Has the military planned for rob apocalypse scenarios? I'm thinking of Terminator-style Skynet situations and such. For any biological threat, prepare. Invest in plastic sheeting, duct tape, bottled water, 4 WKS worth, non-perishable foods, 4 WKS worth, and medical supplies. In the event of an airborne outbreak, cover all the windows and doors to your home with plastic sheeting, sealing the edges with the duct tape. Stay indoors and await the play-by-play. You can also make single-use gas masks with water bottles, sheeting and tape, and you can make a reusable one by using some of the medical supplies. You want to create a barrier to your home and person as much as possible. Limit contact to contaminate, taking special care to protect all of your skin from direct contact to anything that may be contaminated. Practice bloodborne pathogens knowledge. Stay clean as much as possible. When washing hands, always wash to the elbow, and for God's sake protect your eyes. Even simple safety glasses would go a long way to protect you from a potential pathogen of an as yet unidentified source. Are there any situations where there literally isn't a contingency plan at all? Like literally just to abandon hope, all ye who see this message type of thing? No. Staying positive and planning. We have plans for things that will wipe the world out in a moment. Asteroids. We completely know that plan is pointless, but having a plan, even if it's the shittiest plan to ever exist, gives people hope. So we plan. We plan out our plans while planning tomorrow's plans. And the reason we do that is because people are calmer when they are pointed in a direction and told what to expect. For a lot of these, the plans are only there for their psychological benefits to the soon-to-be dead. Service to the end, my friend. I imagine due to the popularity of the religion that there's a video in the event of the rapture. That would be a fascinating one to watch. Aside from having a zombie video, what's another funny video you're aware of? The funniest for me is basically for biblical level pestilence, specifically an invasion of crickets. You may laugh at this idea, but every few years a few places in the southern United States are overrun by crickets and it shuts those areas down. They actually decimate the areas that get invaded. They destroy crops, homes, cars, electronics, electricity towers, and so forth. They become so thick that you can't see through their cloud, making the sky dark at times. But for it to happen there would have to be a massive uptake and breeding, and environment sustainability, enough food to go around. But people would literally be walking through a blizzard of crickets. So the method of dealing with this would be large laser axe designed to shoot the crickets dead. It was originally invented for use in killing mosquitoes to tackle malaria, but very similar technology would be used as it would be able to kill several million in just a few minutes. Do they have a contingency for if someone creates Mecha Hitler or some dictatorial equivalent? Well, this is diving into territory outside of my particular job. I advised on the medical fallout of disasters, so I never got to take part in the offensive side of the Air Force. I patched people up. But I will say that the military likes to take a special interest in any dictator, often snuffing out the ones they don't like before they even rise to full power. If our government can get something out of the deal, they will absolutely leave them in place. It's a total crapshoot. What if some real-life Jurassic Park shit happens? This is actually a fun question. So from a scientific standpoint, we are a lot closer to this than you would think. Having a Jurassic Park, I mean, with CRISPR, you will be able to not only bring back dinosaurs, but certainly way down the road one would be able to create their own creatures from scratch. But for the military, most of their attention is focused on the militarization of CRISPR, getting the science and exploring their own particular interests. No contingencies for this particular Jurassic Park thing, but there are countless plans for handling animals. If in the event there were large-scale military intervention needed for an animal outbreak, the animals would always be killed, especially true when biological issues arise, and then disposed of according to needs as it pertains to any biological baddies that might be on board. So we would burn a body infected with a disease that is transmitted easily when aerosolized. I would like to clarify for everyone reading this though that we are not necessarily close to creating dinosaurs in any sense. Just closer than we were like 30 years ago. Even with CRISPR, we just simply don't have the technology. We have not been able to obtain any samples of dinosaur DNA because they're just too old. Even in perfectly preserved mammoths, the DNA just begins to break down from age. So we couldn't even bring back a mammoth right now, let alone something millions of years older than that. This biggest issue is that de-extinction is incredibly hard. The most well-known attempt has been with the Spanish ibex. They took fresh tissue samples from the last one to die and used that DNA to clone that individual back into existence. Unfortunately, without a Spanish ibex uterus and hormones, the infant ibex died only a few minutes after birth. Despite being carried in a very close relative of the ibex, mammals are easier than reptiles and birds to clone. No eggs needed, but we haven't figured out how to do cross-species birth yet, let alone something that's been dead for millions of years and with no fully intact DNA left. What is the military's priority in a widespread outbreak? Would it be saving as many people as possible, or protecting important assets required for the long-term survival of civilization, that is, food sources and government facilities? The people are always saved first. This is about to get a bit gross, so apologies. You save the people first because if need be they can become the resource. You said in the Asteroid thread that the government prepares for every scenario imaginable and beyond. Obviously they cannot keep all of these contingency plans current. I assume there are certain concerns that are a higher priority and thus are updated more frequently based on changing circumstances. For example, the threat of NK dropping bombs, Russian cyber attacks knocking electric grids offline, and Canada Goose selling out of coats before Christmas are high profile, cataclysmic events that I am sure the army prepares for more than say the threat of the entire Coast Guard defecting to Maduro's regime and holding all US ports hostage in exchange for sanction relief and arms. That being said, what are some unexpected or weird scenarios that are kept more up to date than civilians would venture to guess? I can answer this. To a degree, the Pentagon is constantly running future warfare scenarios that are 20 years out. For example, right now, they are planning on fighting a war against someone or something that might exist in the year 2040. They ask the questions. Who could that enemy be? What would the battlefield look like? Air, ground, sea, space, cyber, etc. What kinds of weapons would they use against us? And most importantly, what kinds of weapons would we need to effectively counter that threat? Number 4 is the most important because that is the one that guides the budgets. Every year the Pentagon retires 5% of the military hardware and buys 5% of what's new. Therefore every 20 years you have a completely refreshed military that will hopefully be equipped to tackle the enemies we face today and tomorrow. During the Cold War this was easy. The enemy was Russia. After the Cold War it was a dual theater conflict of Russia-China. But then terrorism caught us off guard and we found ourselves fighting wars in the Middle East. We weren't prepared against insurgencies and desert battles. But here we are now 20 years later and we can handle that easily. But now, we are establishing the Space Command because in 20 years, as to the contingency plans, there are contingency plans for everything. No plan survives engagement with the enemy. This is true. But, having done the prep work, you have the tools and resources at hand to handle pretty much whatever gets thrown at you. How much do the plans prioritize as saving the military's weapons over people? Sadly more than you want to know. It all comes down to numbers. How much damage can I do with this gun? Versus how much damage will be done if I lose all these people? All war is, when you get right down to it, is a numbers game. You put your resources, like men and weapons, up against the people. You can afford to let some people die if it means the difference between you protecting thousands of others because of the advantage the weapon gives you. I know it must suck to hear, but not everyone will get saved, and not everyone who will die a just death. War is epically shitty and no one wins. Ever. So, the military is prepared for a zombie outbreak? Well, I suppose we gotta have planned for anything. Did you see any plans in case of a plague like the Black Plague? Also in your current job, how is it? I've thought about joining that field but wimped out. It's not a zombie outbreak that has been prepared for, but the rapid spread or the rabies virus. Infection. The rabies virus is frequently mutated some way to become the zombie virus. We plan very expensively for mass infections all the time. The Black Plague being one of them that we have planned for. The bubonic plague actually never died off. People get it all the time. So there is a very real threat of that coming back. So typically anytime there is a concern over a virus such as this infecting the masses, air travel would be stopped. The borders would be tightly controlled until the infection rate was contained. If there was a particular area that was suffering a bad outbreak, the city would be quarantined until all those infected had been treated. The whole goal is to stop the spread. What if a portal to hell were to open up? Is there a plan? For hell no. The closest thing I can think of would be time travel. What was the one show with the gate? Seagate? No. Shit, I can't remember the name. But there is a show where the military goes through these gates that led to another gate somewhere else in a different dimension. I'm probably not explaining that right. But, the military has a plan in the event of time travel. And it's the same as every other plan. Contain. 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 So the suspected person would be quarantined along with any belongings. And then they would be investigated. In the event the claims prove true, and after quite a bit of prodding and poking, a delegate would be sent with the person back to their time to gather more data. Then on and on with the back and forth, and then once a relationship is built, then trade delegates freely as our federal government dictates in the moment. Then branch our times by cataloging technological advantages and what current day applications would be. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.